Not to let Sam Harris be the biggest rake jumper of last week, Liz Cheney doubled down on her anti-Trump tirades and lost her primary election. So why don't we go over...
Hooray!
Yeah, exactly. Why don't we go over some of the celebratory stuff, indulge in President Trump dunking on her, and then decide to laugh when she announces she might run for president? Truly.
As if you can't win a primary, but you're going to run for president.
Yeah. Failing upwards epitomised, I suppose. Trump 2024. Speaking of controversies in American politics, if you subscribe to lotuscaesars.com, you'll be able to watch our premium video on abortion. Josh and I decided to sit down and speak in the aftermath of Roe v. Wade, and also in the UK, they're trying to ban anti-abortion protesters being within a certain radius of abortion centres. We decided to have a chat about where we line up on the issues. Unlike one of our prior contemplations, this had a lot of positive comments because it was pretty reasonable, pretty cordial, and we came at it from different perspectives. But
I think it was a really good discussion. I think, although we don't necessarily agree, we had a really civil, productive conversation about all of the different moral questions and philosophical questions involved in the matter. And I think that it's some really good work from both of us, if I pat myself on the back a bit.
Yeah, well, that's like I sent to you over the weekend. When I watched it back, I appreciate having you as a colleague and friend, so it was a great thing.
Likewise.
Yeah. Anyway, in the spirit of mockery, shall we say, moving on from that wholesomeness, let's laugh at Liz Cheney, shall we? Liz Cheney, Trump archenemy ousted in Wyoming election, and the BBC are also crying in here, because for some reason they have a stake in American politics. So Harriet Haberman blew out Liz Cheney, securing 66.3% of the vote. That's 113,025 votes. And that's in the least populated state in all of the USA, because Wyoming is overwhelmingly Trump country. It is the exact kind of place that Jussie Smollett would not like to visit at 4 a.m. for the Subway sandwich. So I'm just going to read from here. The three-term congresswoman was once a rising Republican star, only because her dad's name recognition. All 10 Republicans who voted to impeach Mr. Trump after his supporters attacked the US Capitol building in January last year have been targeted in a scorched earth campaign of revenge. So far, 4 have retired, and now 4 have been beaten by his chosen candidates in primary ballots in the state of Wyoming, Washington, Michigan, and South Carolina. Only 2 have successfully maintained their places on the Republican ticket for re-election. The daughter of ex-Vice President Dick Cheney was the last of the 10 to face the Trumpian assault. And so if we go over to the next one, we'll read all the names provided by Scott Pressler, who runs a voter drive and regional, urban cleanup enterprises. He's the guy that picked litter out of Baltimore. So it's Tom Rice, Liz Cheney, John Katko, Fred Upton, Peter Major, Adam Kinzinger, who has actually been districted out of running again. I thought he just wasn't going to be elected, but it turns out that they were just like, no, we don't even want you around. Anthony Gonzalez and Jamie Herrera-Boita. So those are all the rhinos that have been booted out and won't be returning for the next term. So
hopefully the rhinos go extinct.
Yes, yeah, well, I'm suddenly for the ivory trade again. So Trump's obviously been enjoying this as much as we do, so if we just look at his True Social posts. Congrats to Harriet Hageman on her great and very decisive win in Wyoming. This is a wonderful result for America and a complete rebuke of the unselect committee of political hacks and thugs. Liz Cheney should be ashamed of herself the way she acted and her spiteful, sanctimonious words and actions towards others. Now she can finally disappear into the depths of political oblivion, where I am sure she will be much happier than where she is right now. Thank you, Wyoming.
I love how he writes.
I do miss him from Twitter, dear God. So if we just go on to the next one, I've just compiled some of his, they're good fun. Liz Cheney's uninspiring concession speech, which we'll watch a clip from in a minute, in front of a tiny, in quotes, as if he's got a source for it, crowd in the great state of Wyoming, focused on her belief that the 2020 presidential election was not, as Trump says, despite evidence to the contrary, rigged and stolen. Don't boot us up, YouTube, it's just him saying it. In numerous states, they were not approved by state legislatures, etc., etc. Liz Cheney is a fool who played right into the hands of those who want to destroy the country. So Trump is clearly upset with Liz Cheney's belief that the election was the most safe and secure in American history, which we are compelled to say.
Yes, we can't say anything about that.
No, we cannot comment other than...
Except on the website.
Yeah. If we go to the next one. The fake news media has badly soiled Liz Cheney, who has just suffered the biggest defeat of a sitting congressperson in history, broke the record of another impeacher, Tom Rice of South Carolina, losing by 40 points all over the place doing interviews that nobody wants to hear. No wonder their ratings are so bad. Her record-setting horrible results were a referendum on the Unselect Committee of Political Hacks and Thugs. I love how he's just running with this actual name.
Is like that's his new nickname for the,
it's
the
like,
rhinos.
It's like Horseface and what was Crooked Hillary? Yeah, that's the new one for the January 6th committee, of which she is definitely one. Amazing how they keep her on the air. And if we just go to the last one of him gloating. I assume that with the very big Liz Cheney loss, far bigger than had ever been anticipated, the January 6th Committee of Political Hacks and Thugs will quickly begin the beautiful process of dissolution. This was a referendum on the never-ending witch hunt. The people have spoken. Well, I don't think there's anything to disagree with there, given our previous reporting on how they featured the likes of Tim Pool and Alex Jones on January 6th committee hearings. The hilarious thing was Jamie Raskin, who compiled those clips. He is a Democrat representing Tim Pool's current district, where he's moved to in West Virginia. And a couple of days after he featured Tim Pool and accused him of inciting insurrection for reading out a Fox News article of Donald Trump's direct quotes, he sent him a text trying to fundraise for his re-election campaign. Go and watch the Timcast episode on that, because I've never heard the Beanie Man more angry. So if we go over to the next one, we can learn about who has Civil War, who has replaced Liz Cheney. Before her failed gubernatorial bid, Hageman served as an advisor to Cheney's short-lived 2014 Senate campaign. She then endorsed and stumped for Cheney's 2016 congressional campaign, so this is very much a knife in the back from the inside. In 2016, Hageman actually condemned Trump as a racist and xenophobe who would repel voters that Republicans needed to win in a national election. Now, we've seen this with some of Trump's endorsements, particularly like Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, who's now the Republican frontrunner, of where he'd slated Trump before, he'd said he was pro-trans surgery, he'd been soft on China, etc., and now they've tried to change their colours and Trump has come and endorsed them. But it seems like this is probably the best of a bad bunch, because she's recanted some of this stuff.
Well, it's refreshing to see that the Republicans are actually kind of gatekeeping their own side a little bit, and I think that a lot of right-wing conservative movements elsewhere need to take notes on this, because this is actually really important, because then they can maintain hold on power far better than, say, the Conservatives in Britain, where we kind of allow in people who would quite easily fit in the other side of the aisle, in the Labour Party and things like that. Yep. And it's good to see that these people are getting their just desserts.
Well, Jack Posobiec's spoken about this, as he said that the Libertarian Party won't really go anywhere. Even the Mises Caucus takeover has happened. But if the Republicans modelled themselves after how the Libertarian Mises Caucus took over the party, then they wouldn't need a third party. The MAGA party is a party within the Republican Party, and it's slowly swelling and returning the Republicans to their original roots of Americana and constitutionalism, away from the uniparty union with the Democrats. We don't want any more Lindsey Grahams who high-five Kamala Harris, but then go on air and talk about how much the Democrats are destroying the country. So Hageman has not publicly addressed her prior statements, but has briefly mentioned her past opposition to Trump, telling the New York Times in 2021 that she heard and believed the lies that Democrats and Liz Cheney's friends in the media were telling at the time. But that is ancient history. I quickly realized that allegations against President Trump were untrue. He was the greatest president of my lifetime, and I'm proud to have been able to re-nominate him in 2022, and I'm proud to support him today.
Is that true, though?
Well, you know what? I am afraid for the Americans who are represented by rhinos and whose people will say the right things to get into office and do nothing. However, I can personally speak to the fact that as an uninformed kid, I was kind of meh on Trump when I was 18, because I didn't know anything about American politics. All I'd heard was Orange Man bad. When it came out and I got to university and I started doing more personal research, I ended up watching the, of all things, Piers Morgan interview, the first one, Sit Down with Trump. And when I sat down and I fact-check his claims about the economy and things like that, I was going, oh, actually, he's quite funny. I quite like him. And he's got some good policies. So maybe I've just been put in a media tailspin by some of the stuff I was educated on. And I hope that some of the more rhino GOP Republicans, whether or not they're just blowing the political winds, are actually coming round to the president who might be currently in exile but riding back over the hill to another term.
I found that maybe a similar thing happens with me. I stayed up all night on the 2016 election and watched the whole thing. And I was expecting Hillary Clinton to win, and I was kind of hate watching the whole election, just like, I don't want to see this woman win it. And when Trump won, I was just like, what?
Yeah.
I was just like, well, okay then.
Do you have a Young Turks moment where they were counting off the states and you're going, what? See, I did that with the 2020 election. We had a watch party, we had drinks, we had a bet that we'd have to down an entire bottle of something if Kanye won one state. And then because of how long they took to count the votes, because of pipes bursting, it ended up being rather anticlimactic because we ended up sleeping through it, etc. And then lockdown hit the next day. I love living in the UK. Hageman has long sparred with environmentalists over anti-conservation record. Dubious. A background that earned her the title Wicked Witch of the West, something she has embraced. And suddenly, because she's upsetting the Extinction Rebellion types, I quite like her. She prevented the USDA from enforcing the registration of all ranches with the federal government, is one of the complaints. So it seems she actually has some libertarian leanings. Now, I don't know the rest of her voting record, But just like your weapons, why should the federal government know exactly who's on your property and where it is at all times?
This is one of the main problems with some of the Republicans, is that they're too willing to entertain big government. Like, these sorts of things are obviously far better dealt with by libertarian types, and I know I'm a little bit biased being that way inclined, but I think that there's a much greater appetite in the Republican voters for this kind of direction than there is this sort of we're keeping the same size state but a different colour this time.
Yeah, losing slowly. We, like many patriotic Americans, want you guys to keep your constitution, and so if a Republican votes for anything like that, registering all of your ranches with the federal government or anything like red flag laws, I suggest they get the same primary treatment as Liz Cheney. The last thing that she did say was, I did vote for Liz in the last elections that she ran for. At the time, I was very happy with what she was doing, but I just don't think she cares about Wyoming. I think she cares about more what she's doing in Washington, said another Hagerman voter outside an early voting site in Jackson, Wyoming on that Monday. Another one, Horton Spitzer, a retired rancher and staunch Trump supporter, said, there's visceral hatred, and that's going to drive people to the polls. The code of the West says ride for the brand. If you don't take your side, take your cowdog, walk into the sunset, and never come back. And that's the treatment that Cheney has seen. She has been retired like an old racehorse. So why is Cheney so hated? Let's go into her voting record, shall we? So I've read a stat that she actually voted with Trump 93% of the time, but I would suggest that it's the other 7% that matters. So she was anti-gun control, pro-life, but then inconsistent on fiscal responsibility because she voted for the first round of Biden's stimulus plans. She then voted recently, yes, on the right to contraception and respect for marriage acts. Those were acts that were introduced after the Roe v. Wade overturning with the Dobbs v. Jackson ruling, because Clarence Thomas, in his opinion, bucked the trend and said, maybe we should re-examine Griswold v. Connecticut, Lawrence v. Texas, and Hodge v. Obergefell, which looked at sodomy laws, gay marriage laws, and rights to contraception laws, all reading rights into the Constitution. Exactly. Well, even if you agree with something like you should be able to buy contraception and anal sex should not be criminalised, then those aren't rights found in the Constitution?
Yeah, it's... What lots of people on the left misunderstand is that it's a constitutional issue first and foremost when you're looking at it from the legal perspective. Because they're saying that, yes, people should have a right to this, but the Constitution is the framework for all other American laws. And if it's inconsistent with a more important principle, then of course it shouldn't be in the Constitution.
Yeah, you can't write laws that are anathema to your founding doctrine. Otherwise, and this is why, the definition of equality keeps being squabbled over by the Democrats and Republicans. If you're just trying to look for ins to crowbar your ideology into the Constitution, I don't think you can call yourself an American patriot, and you should not be in the halls of Congress, least of all involved in politics.
I think it's similar to when someone invites you into their home, you follow their rules, and I feel like the rules of America are the US Constitution, and you've got to abide by those in the same way. Even if you're born there and you've got ancestry all the way back, you've still got to abide by these rules that everyone else everyone with a sane mind accepts as a given.
Yeah, it's like the Republicans are telling the Democrats, take your shoes off at the door, please. And the Democrats are screaming about how they want to tread the turds from outside all over the carpet.
They want to equitably distribute them.
And black people disproportionately wear sliders, so telling me to take my shoes off is racist and all this sort of stuff. Cheney was also vice chair of the January 6th committee, which has earned her a lot of infamy, and she voted to recommend that the House of Representatives find Stephen Bannon in contempt of Congress for his refusal to comply with the subpoena duly issued by the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol.
Could she be any worse?
Well, yeah, because she actually defended the FBI raiding Mar-a-Lago.
Oh,
because the next one, I have been ashamed to hear members of my party attacking the integrity of FBI agents involved with the recent Mar-a-Lago search. The ones that broke the padlock that they put there. These are sickening comments that put the lives of patriotic public servants at risk, and you can tell all the Blue Anon bots have decided to like that and retweet it. Lovely. I'm glad that she's getting
in the grass.
Well, she's getting organic support from her home state of Wyoming. Oh wait!
I like that the first comment there is breaking news. The government is not above criticism.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed. Clearly, because she decided to criticize President Trump incessantly. So she's not actually the only one. Just a brief detour. Mike Pence also decided to defend the FBI. If we can play this clip.
For goodness sake.
Earlier today and elsewhere, I also want to remind my fellow Republicans, we can hold the Attorney General accountable for the decision that he made without attacking rank and file law enforcement personnel at the FBI. The Republican Party is the party of law and order. Our party stands with the men and women who serve on the thin blue line at the federal and state and local level. And these attacks on the FBI must stop. Calls to defund the FBI are just as wrong as calls to defund the police. And the truth of the matter is, we need to get to the bottom of what happened. We need to let the facts play out. But more than anything else, the American people need to be reassured in the integrity of our justice system, and the very appearance of a recurrence of politics playing a role in decisions at the Justice Department demands transparency as never before. And I will continue to call on the Attorney General and the Justice Department to make that information available to the American people, and do so now.
So, a few things there. Number one, if he's going for his obvious presidential bid as a centrist Republican candidate, don't model yourself after Mason Verger from Hannibal, because that lighting makes his skin look like a mask.
It also looks like he's got a bright white fade as well.
Yeah.
So he's going to win over the urban voters.
Yeah, he looks like an inverted colour version of the new elf from the Rings of Power, for those who aren't watching the video portion of this podcast. A few things. Number one, the FBI was a temporary organisation. It was set up by J. Edgar Hoover, who was a cross-dressing state surveillance maniac, so I already don't like it's how it's germinated. And the police versus federal law enforcement comparison is unwarranted, because you need state police. You need people appointed by their local community to address community concerns. You need people to react to rights violations as a watchman. What you don't need is some gigantic federal apparatus who, including the frontline personnel, will be kicking down doors like jackbooted thugs, because the government decides to, I don't know, plant evidence on your laptop, etc., which has actually happened before, spy on private citizens, manufacture some sort of false flag terrorist attack, like the so-called kidnapping of Governor Gretchen Whitmer with their agent provocateurs, or even intervene in January 6th. Oh wait, the FBI director said we can't even answer the fact of if there were FBI agents involved in the Capitol riot.
They were obviously brown shirts, and still are, for the Democrats.
Yep.
That's what they are. They're the on-the-ground wing, the violent wing of the Democratic Party. That's what they're doing.
There was a poll that came out and asked, in so many words, are they Biden's Gestapo? And quite a few people said yes.
Well,
so
it's undeniable at this point, isn't
comparison. It? Yeah. So if we can go to the next one. Speaking of delusional Republicans, Liz Cheney's actually saying that she's considering running for president. So I'm gonna torture you with this clip.
Oh no.
The great and original champion of our party, Abraham Lincoln, was defeated in elections for the Senate and the House before he won the most important election of all. Lincoln ultimately prevailed, he saved our Union, and he defined our obligation as Americans for all of history. Speaking at Gettysburg of the great task remaining before us, Lincoln said that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth.
So interesting that she's going to model herself after a man who was an excellent speaker, but was happy to suspend habeas corpus and censor the press, just like with the January 6th hearings.
The
Lovely.
gall of her to compare herself to Abraham Lincoln as well. Ugh.
Well,
American politics is just so depressing.
Abraham Lincoln at least, quote-unquote, freed the slaves, even if it wasn't his intention, as Harry has pointed out in his hangout. But what's Liz Cheney done? Oh, that's right, become famous off the back of her warmongering dad. So if we go to this clip here, she was on NBC News announcing tepidly that she might run for president.
The former president said last night you're now headed to political oblivion. You said this fight is just beginning. You've even launched a political organization already. So let's just be straight about it. Are you considering running for president yourself?
Well, what I'm going to do, Savannah, is
Yes.
spend the next several months completing my work in Congress, obviously completing my work representing the people of Wyoming. We have a tremendous amount of work left to do on the January 6th committee. And also, though, I'm going to be making sure that people all around this country understand the stakes of what we're facing, understand the extent to which we've now got one major political party, my party, which has really become a cult of personality. And we've got to get this party back to a place where we're embracing the values and the principles on which it was founded, and talking about, fundamental issues of civics, fundamental issues of what does it mean to be a constitutional republic.
But Congresswoman, you didn't answer me yes or no.
It takes
yeah,
to
I know
keep
that
Donald Trump. I will be doing whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office.
Well, I know you didn't say yes or no, and that's fine if you're thinking about it. But are you thinking about it? Are you thinking about running for president?
That's a decision that I'm going to make in the coming months, Savannah. I'm not going to make any announcements here this morning, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'll make a decision in the coming months.
There's a politician, if I ever heard one.
Yeah, especially one that looks like a wine-aunt librarian. But obviously, the fact that she's thinking about it is not a yes or no. It's a how badly would I get trounced versus how much of donors' money can I pocket and make away with. So
well, if she's anything like her father, she's going to get a lot of money from the arms industry because they know that, well, if she's carrying on the legacy of her father, who got lots of money from arms dealers, well, she's a safe bet.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Afghanistan would like to be reinvaded sometime soon. I just thought I'd play this one last clip about her running for president because the hubris in this is even more staggering than her concession speech.
So you've said you're going to think about running for president. Would you be running to send a message, or would you be running to win?
No, look, you run for president because you believe you would be the best candidate, because you believe you'd be the best president of the United States. And so any decision that I make about doing something that significant and that serious would be with the intention of winning, and because I think I would be the best candidate.
Would your path be inside the Republican Party or outside the Republican Party?
I haven't made any specific decisions or plans about that at this point.
So running as an independent is a possibility. It's one of the things you're thinking about.
I'm not going to go down that path anymore in terms of speculating.
It sounds like the RNC is already trying to figure out ways to keep you out. There's this idea that to get in any debate, you have to promise that you would support the eventual nominee. I mean, that's obviously not going to happen. You're not going to do that.
I can understand why they would not want me on a debate stage with Donald Trump. And I would imagine Donald Trump isn't too interested in that either.
But the entire American public are very interested
in
seeing you up against Donald Trump on the debate stage. And this realpolitik is why even notorious rhino, whose son has interests in Ukraine, Mitt Romney, says Liz Cheney would not win a 2024 GOP nomination, despite him voting alongside her for Trump's impeachment. He said, I'm not going to encourage anyone to run for president. I've done that myself, and that's something I'm not doing again. I don't know if she really wants to do that. She would not become the nominee if she were to run. I can't imagine that would occur. Ouch.
If even Mitt Romney can see, then the writing is kind of on the wall already before she's even declared, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if Mitt Romney can commit to a position before the Uniparty tell him what to do, that's a pretty damning indictment of how badly you would be trashed. So I just thought I'd finish with some more good news.
Okay.
Not only has the chief quisling of the regime been ousted in a primary, but its very own eunuch has been fired as well. Goodbye, Varys.
Mr. Potato Head himself.
Yep, from CNN. CNN is ending Reliable Sources with Brian Stelter. Not just that, Reliable Sources as a show is being taken off air after 30 years. So this fat little ballsack decided to ruin the reputation of the show in a few short years. And I just thought...
reputation, to be fair?
Yeah. Well, as a result, Brian Stelter will leave the company. So they've just fired him outright. A CNN spokesperson said to CNN Business, I'm sure that was a long phone call, "We appreciate his contributions to the network and wish him well as he embarks on new endeavors." Tim Pool said that both the defeat of Liz Cheney and Brian Stelter is like winning the lottery twice in 2 days, which I thought was a pretty good summary. So
a rare white pill.
Yeah, we're just gonna look at Brian Stelter coping and seething with the fact that it shows off air. If we can just play this clip.
Hey, I am Brian Stelter. I am live in New York, and this is still Reliable Sources. All right, here we go. One of the biggest media stories of the week is right here. It's the end of this show.
All right, there we go. He looks like a kid who's expecting an Xbox at Christmas, opens it up and finds socks. It's just joy. I love it. So if we play the outro to his final episode.
And that's the watchword here. Accountability. So this show's going away, but there's going to be so many more. We need to have room for media criticism and debate and discussion, and we will. So much of the media ecosystem in 2022 is garbage, but so much of it is spectacular. The hard part's sorting out the treasure from the trash. These are thorny, complicated things. I know I never had all the answers. I didn't even always have all the questions, but it was the gift of a lifetime to get to confront these issues on international television with the backing of CNN. Here's what I do know. I know it's not partisan to stand up for decency and democracy and dialogue. It's not partisan to stand up to demagogues. It's required. It's patriotic. We must make sure we don't give platforms to those who are lying to our faces. But we also must make sure we are representing the full spectrum of debate and representing what's going on in this country and in this world. That's why CNN needs to be strong. That's why I believe CNN will always be strong. You viewers at home, it's on you. CNN must remain strong. I know the 4,500 staffers are going to do their part to make it stronger than ever. But it's going to be on you to hold CNN accountable. And not just CNN. You got to hold your local paper accountable. You got to hold your local digital outlet accountable. It's on all of us. We are all members of the media, all helping to make it better. That's what I
CNN
believe.
Plus. Hold them accountable.
Can't wait to be watching CNN, seeing what happens to in the future. I'm going to be rooting for it. I want CNN to be strong. I believe America needs CNN to be strong. I believe the free world needs CNN to be strong. And it will continue to be. Because all of us are going to help make that happen. The free world needs a reliable source.
And that's why I'm sacked.
For reliable sources, for the last time, I'm Brian Stelter. Thanks for being with us.
For the last time before I go home to my wife. I swear, I'm my wife. So I'm just very glad to see that little clown gone. But the hubris of just saying that he is the progenitor of truth. You've just been wrong on pretty much every story. The other day, it took you 2 years to admit, oh yeah, the Hunter Biden laptop, in which there are images of him with possible children on it, might be factual, where Hunter Biden himself said, yeah, I filmed myself because I had body dysphoria about my large penis. Oh, it's suddenly not Russian disinformation when he admits to it, is it?
Well, there's so much photo evidence, you need to bleach your eyes.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Yeah. So we just have the great Donald Trump, again, boasting about this. He's being very conciliatory as Brian Stelter looks for a new home, probably a fireman's sofa. Brian Stelter of Fake News CNN got fired because he lied and lied and lied about me. May he rest in peace.
Is he getting killed at the end, is he?
It reminds me of when he airstriked Soleimani on the tarmac, the Iranian general, and then rather than put a press release out of it, he just tweeted the American flag. Just, what a boss. If we go to the next one. Trivia question, who's got less charisma, Brian Stelter or Liz Cheney? I say Liz Cheney, because Stelter could have gotten more votes than she did the other night in Wyoming. She lost by 40. If you're saying, this is just ad hominems, yeah. Yeah, wonderful. So if we just go on to the last one, we'll check in on what the true leader of the free world has been doing while Donald Trump has been tweeting. There's This Week in Joe Biden. Let's have a look. For those who aren't listening, he's shaking the hand of Chuck Schumer. He's taken his mask off. He coughs into his fist multiple times before giving a speech, and then sitting down, looking like a dementia patient, he gives Joe Manchin his pen and shakes his hand after coating his fist in whatever COVID he got twice in the same week because he's double boosted. So, very legitimate for the leader of the free world here, of course.
We've just witnessed a political assassination.
Yeah, and now he's looking around to see which
he's
hand
spreading
to
the
shake.
love.
Yeah. He's trying to see which ghost is going to stand behind him for shaking his hand next, which he's done multiple times now. So as we can see, the leadership of the American Uni Party is very legitimate, though because it seems like Biden, despite his best intentions stating he wants to run for another term, he might not be up to the task because he might be taken out by COVID first. Of course, we don't wish any ill on the current former vice president, but I am personally begging for crazy Liz Cheney to take up an independent position. And the reason is, the Republicans won't vote for her, the Democrats won't vote for her, but some Democrats who don't like Joe Biden might just split the anti-Trump vote. And wouldn't that be just such a shame if Democrats were given more options for their brand of anti-Trumpianism to really stick it to the Republicans. I also think it's a pretty good endorsement of Donald Trump that in about 6 years he's taken out the Bush, Obama, Clinton, and now Cheney dynasties.
It's beautiful to see, isn't it?
Yeah, and I
Brings
think we
a smile to our face.
We should, in 2024, allow the Biden crime family to become another on that body count of reputational destruction. If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go over to lotuseaters.com to subscribe to become a premium member on our website, where you'll get lots of exclusive content, like this epochs from Bo and Josh on the Allied's operation in the film A Bridge Too Far. If you'd like to see the rest of the content we're putting out, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.